So, what is the Year 2 collection? So, what is Bushido Blade?
Not everyone can be a samurai warrior. Not everyone can live by the power of the sword. Not everyone can die with honor. I, for example, make kazoos.
Attention, bloodthirsty consumers. Are you sick of these fighting games where you're fighting with weapons like blades and spears, but you might as well be fighting with bread and pillows with how much damage they're doing? Do you want to see some bloodshed? Well, Squaresoft and the PS1 have the perfect game for you. Bushido Blade was released in 1996 on the PlayStation Uno. A one-on-one weapon-based fighting game, this game was released in the same era as Soul Edge and the Tekken series, but isn't as acclaimed, to which I think is a generational shame. While most other fighting games nerfed the effectiveness of weapons in regards to balancing out the fighting system, Bushido Blade calls the rest of them sweet and make weapons behave realistically, which means fights can be ended in literally one strike. Yes, I'm being dead serious. None of that sword being as dull as a bread knife. You hit your opponent with a good place hard shot, they are as dead as the ozone layer. There are no health meters, no time meters, no kind of HUD whatsoever, just a couple of well-placed swings and death. The abruptness of this makes every fight super tense, as one mistake can lead you to your end. No takebacks. Not just that, but any non-lethal shot affects both your and your opponent's ability to fight. You can injure an opponent's arm and make them fight one-handed. You can take out a leg and limit their ability to dodge or even run away. You can even take out both legs and watch them roll on the ground like an idiot. Then stab them in the forehead to end their suffering. This quick pace of battles requires both patience and precision. Hence, the code of the Bushido. Bushido Blade is more than its quick-ending nature, however. Like most of the fighting games of that era, it's a 3D style fighter, with the fighters given free reign to run around the arena and interact with the environment. You are automatically facing your opponent at the start, with each button controlling a strike target. You can strike toward the head, the upper body area, or lower body or legs, which, depending on your opponent's actions, can result in damage to a limb or a lethal shot if you hit the right area. Some characters also have special projectiles that they can throw, which are never lethal, but can definitely lead to some shish kebabbing. You can also change between 3 stances, which changes up the direction of your attacks, and the different combos you can pull off, just in case your opponent has gotten used to your usual attacks. And just in case you don't want to engage with your opponent, just by holding the L button, you can just run away. With this feature, you can literally run away from your opponent all throughout the 3D environment, running through bamboo, climbing up hills and down cliffs, and pissing off your opponent to the max. Your opponent can also do this, so some games might degenerate to a Benny Hill chase sequence. The body damage system and maneuverability combine to make up this game's crowning jewel and most outstanding features. It made all fights super stressful, especially when fighting multiplayer. This doesn't mean that this doesn't have its drawbacks, as with fights ending in an instant, there is a high degree of bullshit involved with fighting. Weapons are of course restricted by the environment, so if you are close to a wall or any other solid object, you can continuously hit it off to back to back, which your opponent can take advantage of by cutting your nipples off. You can guard, but your opponent can get past you with a lucky shot because defending is clunky. You can disable both your opponent's legs and your other arm and have them at the brink of death, and then they can get that one lucky shot in and kill you, which is likely to cause an actual deathmatch in real life. Outside of combat, this game has a standard story mode, versus mode, / which is their survival mode, a POV mode, a theater to watch all the endings you unlocked, and your standard options. You have your pick of 6 characters, all random assassins from the same shadowy clan. The story is essentially the character you pick is a deserter to the clan and everyone else is sent by the corrupted leader to kill your ass. Now, there isn't much difference between each character besides slight speed, strength, and special move differences, but instead, before you fight, you get your choice of weapon. 8 weapons in fact, which change up your different stances, attacks, and combos. In a sense of functionalities, the weapons are the choosable characters, while the characters themselves are more aesthetic. Though some characters specialize with certain weapons more than others. The weapons themselves range from different types of swords, a naginata, and even a fucking sledgehammer. Each weapon has a different score ranking in the categories of speed, strength, and reach that affect the fighting style of each user. For example, you can expect the sledgehammer to be powerful with a good reach, but really slow in practice. So while trying to hit opponents might be a challenge, one hit may be all you need to put them down. So yeah, story mode. It's your standard fight with an opponent back to back till you make it to the sub-bosses and the final boss. The combatants may talk to you at the beginning with a courtesy bow, which you can definitely interrupt for an easy kill, and you might get a few words afterwards if they aren't dead yet. But otherwise, it's pretty bare bones. You just keep fighting till a wall of text about dishonor, and now you're back at the menu? The fuck? That's anticlimactic. Did I do something wrong? Well, yes, actually I did. In the story mode, you must honor the Bushido Code, which means no bringing dishonor to your family with your actions. So no pre-fight stabbing, no slashing to the back, no throwing sand on the ground and such, or else the game will literally cock-block you on the ending. If you act honorably, besides the other 5 characters, you also face 3 sub-bosses and the final boss, Hanzuki, head of your clan. Beat him, and you unlock your character's ending. Each character actually has 2 endings, but the second is locked behind the first, which, in order to do so, you must unlock the first and do a convoluted suit of actions that I just don't have the energy for. The only other things to do are slash mode, which is what I'd like to call your basic survival mode. In this crowded castle, you must fight your way through 100 enemies, with a checkpoint at each 10th integral. This is difficult, but not impossible, as each opponent has a strict strategy you can take advantage of. Then there is POV mode, which is for your motion sickness nightmare. Bushido Blade is a super enjoyable and super competitive fighter, lost to history, that, yeah, has its drawbacks, and maybe won't show up on the EVO stage anytime soon. But I argue that remastering this for current consoles will be a good reminder of how even flawed games can be super fun. The strategic yet quick gameplay lends itself for couch co-op fun nights, even if they might turn violent near the end. And hey, completing the slash mode actually unlocks a 7th character, one of the sub-bosses who instead of choosing a weapon, comes fighting with a fucking gun! This game gets 3 swords out of 5.
やすやすこれで終わるわけがない。どういうことだ、半崎。
So what is Mischief Makers?
Hey man, how's it going?
Not bad, not bad. No more cowboy ghosts, right? You gotta understand something. I ride the Clancers. I have the answers. I played Greek dodgeball with a Persian kitty. Just me, Marina light years, and a lot of shaking. Oh sure, those bees need their honey, but I need gold gems. The professor cannot wait forever. The evil empire will not allow it. So, where are you going? Here's fine.
New Mischief Makers, only on Nintendo 64. It's a
In the 5th generation of consoles, 2D platformers went out the window like a bad smell. If it wasn't 3D like Super Mario 64, the games didn't even get a proper look it deserved, and while you still had some good ones, have you ever played a game called Mischief Makers? Mischief Makers was released in 1997 on a Nintendo 64 by Treasure. This was their first release on a Nintendo console, with even Nintendo publishing it in North America and Europe, while in Japan, it was published by Enix. Out of the multitude of 3D platformers released for the console, this was the rare 2D platformer. Well, sorta. The characters and backgrounds were rendered in 3D, but the gameplay and physics operated in a 2D space, sort of like Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo, but even better. This sort of visual style has been given a name 2.5D, and is still pretty popular nowadays in modern indie games and reboots. So while you might see these beautiful sprites for characters and platformers, intermittently you'll see some, let's say, some varying qualities of 3D rendered environments and objects. Speaking of characters, you are Marina Lightyears, or more precisely, Ultra Intergalactic Cybot G Marina Lightyears, an android created by the smart and pretty pervy Professor Theo as a maid, protector, and professional shaker.
Shake, shake!
Both of them are traveling across the galaxy and find their way to Planet Clancer, which, what the fuck is that? What is that? Why is this depressed face everywhere? The houses, the people, the fucking environment. What the fuck is happening here? Anyway, they land and the professor is Princess Peached by a criminal group of depressed Hitmonlees, so it's up to Marina to venture out and continuously save her inept creator. You control Marina across 5 worlds with 12 levels each, walking from left to right, talking to locals, attacking enemies, and in the meantime, shaking everything.
Shake, shake!
No, I'm not joking. Marina's primary way of attacking is grabbing enemies and objects and throwing them either against the wall, ground, or maybe just up in the air for some fun. All of the weapons in the game can be grabbed and thrown, such as shuriken, boomerangs, bombs, and even guns. When you aren't throwing enemies, you're shaking them.
Shake, shake!
Shaking certain things may cause certain things to do something else, such as make a missile grow bigger, maybe turning a pea shooter into a spread shotgun, or maybe accelerating the countdown of a bomb. Mostly though, you'll be shaking down the inhabitants of the planet for any color jewels they may have, with red jewels being used for payment for continues when you exhaust all your life and die, and hints given by this weird pink Clancer ball with a bow. Blue and green gems are used for little and a lot health regeneration respectively, and a special gold gem can only be found once in each level. These gems can also just be found in the level just out in the open, so why are you robbing these people? I don't know, but stealing is badass. Anyway, besides grabbing and shaking, Marina can also jet boost, which can be done in 4 directions for either faster propelling or give yourself a little extra boost to your jumps, which will help you with some of the massive jumps to platforms. Marina can also slide jump and roll for various purposes, and basically, that's all you get. Each level, Marina is dropped in an environment and either told to explore for herself or fulfill a certain objective at the start. These objectives can be to either find a certain object or person, navigate a maze, or even the Olympics.
Disqualified!
You can take a ride on a platform continuously sinking in lava, or navigate these 3D style vertical platform levels that maybe won't make you motion sick. You just know at the end of the level you'll be looking for this green star, which will end the level, but not before judging you with a score, usually very poorly. Intermittently throughout these levels are boss fights, either against these random sad-faced monsters, or the flamboyant commanders of the Empire, the Beast Sector, who are basically if the Power Rangers were combined with the Star Fox team. Each mid-world boss fight follows a pattern of grabbing the boss while they are vulnerable, either throwing them or shaking them. You can grab any projectile that comes towards you to parry it, so it's all a matter of finding out what works. You fight each member of the B Sector twice, with the second time against them and their fucking Transformer-zoids. These boss fights are the most intense, as it has kick-ass music, multiple phases, and you get put in some absurd situations. Like here's Marina riding a fucking cat running away from a wolf man, shooting you on a mecha bike that turns into a mechanical wolf. Do you not see how great this is? This game does have some limitations, however. The controls can be awkward, especially using the boost when you need to go fast, as you can either use the C buttons or the control pad, but the pad is objectively faster even though using the C buttons are a lot more convenient to the hands. Some of the levels aren't great, just being quick run to the right and exit when you see the green star, and with the game being relatively short and easy anyway, you can feel where some laziness came in. Speaking of easy, most of the boss fights outside of the B Sector are piss easy, with dirty spamming slamming being the simplest solution to most of them. Yay! Either way, playing through this game is highly recommended, as it is fun despite how short some of the levels can be. The visuals look great, and the music is outstanding, even if it does repeat quite often. Nowadays, this game is regarded more as a classic, to which I agree, so if you get the chance to, highly recommend giving this a try. This game gets 3 Robo Furries out of 5. So what is the Gizmondo?
This is the story of the bumblebee. Its wings are too small and its body too big. According to all principles, it's too heavy for its wings. It just can't fly. But no one has told this to the bumblebee. So it flies and flies. He doesn't care much about principles, do you?
Mobile console systems are a relative thing of the past in today's age, with every man, dog, and hairless pygmy having a high-powered computer in their pockets nowadays at the ready. The king of the mobile console market, Nintendo, still has stock in that market with the Switch, but they were smart to combine their mobile empire with their wayward modern consoles to make something still innovative in this new age. But years ago, every company wanted to throw their hat in the mobile ring to challenge Emperor Nintendo. And with that stage set, let's take a trip back to 2005 to learn of a story of a lesser known mobile console with drama and backstory pouring out of every orifice. First of all, what in the everlasting fuckcakes is a Gizmondo? Well, it's a mobile console designed by company Tiger Telematics, released in 2005. Second of all, what in the absolute hell were they thinking? Nintendo basically had the mobile systems market under their thumb. Sega and eventually Sony couldn't withstand the might of Mario. What makes you think you of all companies could stand out? And no, Tiger Telematics is not Tiger Electronics, maker of such fine gems as the Tiger handhelds and the R-Zone, which is a story within itself. Tiger Telematics was a Swedish electronics company founded in the year 2000 as Eagle Eye Scandinavian, a small distribution business. Its founder was Carl Freer, a Swedish businessman and entrepreneur. The company did nothing of big importance until it merged with Floor Decor, a carpet retailer based in Jacksonville, Florida, for whatever reason. And with their powers combined, they made Tiger Telematics, the up-and-coming gaming developer headed by Freer and his new business partner, Stefan Eriksson, to take on the big boys of Sony and Nintendo in the UK gaming market. And take them on, they certainly did! The Gizmondo began life known as the Game Track, first unveiled on their website around October 2003. It was initially conceived as a mobile competitor to the other portable consoles of the day. The Game Boy Advance? Yeah, but that's small time. What they really had to worry about is the big bad daddy N-Gage. That part cell phone and part taco had Tiger Telematics shooketh. They have video games and other things? Fuck it. Our console has so much more. 320 by 240 pixel resolution, 128 megabytes of RAM, running on a Windows operating system, a speaker, a Bluetooth, SD card compatibility, a camera, GPS, all of it. All of it! On paper, that sounds like an impressive piece of technology, especially for the age it was released. The Game Track was shown off as a concept at Las Vegas CES in January 2004, and at the German CE Bit show in March 2004, during which I assume the name Game Track got laughed out of both buildings, because soon afterward, the console was officially renamed the Gizmondo, mostly because the doohickey name was taken. With all this stuff crammed in, the console had to be expensive, right? Well, that was another advancement of this new handheld. You could either pay $400 full price for your standard Gizmondo, or you could pay $229 for the Gizmondo, but you get smart ads, interrupting your gameplay every now and again like you're in the middle of a YouTube video. I mean, that's worth it, right? Right? Tiger Telematics went all in on advertisement for the Gizmondo. So much money was spent on parties and drinks and more parties. One particular party, in fact, had a gluttony of celebrity guests to promote the Gizmondo, including Busta Rhymes, Pharrell, Sting, and most importantly, Tom Green.
Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some sausages? Daddy, would you like some sausage? Sausages, sausages.
They even had more celebrities and magazine adverts promoting the thing, including such standouts like British Formula One driver Jenson Button. Well, hold on to that excitement, because executive Stefan Eriksson also worked on promoting by participating in the 24 Hours of Le Mans race in a sponsored Ferrari, which promptly shit itself at the start line and didn't even make it into the race. But, you know what? Screw advertisement. The console is the most powerful. We don't even really need it. It'll sell like hotcakes, you see. the Gizmondo finally made its appearance first in the UK on March 19, 2005, and to Sweden and the United States later in the year due to delays. And the gamble paid off spectacularly. The Gizmondo flew off shelves and no, no. The Gizmondo bombed spectacularly, with fewer than 25,000 units sold over its lifespan, earning it the title of one of the biggest sales failures ever released in the handheld market. But what could have happened? It had so much potential. Well, here's what happened. First of all, the retailers that housed the product were few and far between, and even then, most of them were high-end retail stores. In the US, the console wasn't even available in stores. You had to find them in mall kiosks, you know, where you typically find stolen ROM consoles. Second, before the console ever released, Tiger Telematics let slip an announcement that they had a widescreen variant of the console in development, which led some consumers to believe getting a lowly base console wouldn't be worth it in the end. Psst, hey, the widescreen version was never released. Third, do you know how many games were released for the Gizmondo? 14. Yes, only 14. Oh wait, except if you live in the US, and then you get 9 games. Don't you feel lucky, you bloody Yanks? And with such classics like FIFA Soccer 2005, Hockey Rage 2005, Richard Burns Rally, SSX3, Toy Golf, how could you not get excited? They did have a typing tutor in development though, so that would be fun, even though the handheld had no keyboard peripheral for sale whatsoever. But don't forget the breakout hit and clear best-selling game, Sticky Balls.
You got blue balls, green balls, yellow and all. I'm gonna get them sticky balls.
A puzzle game mixing pool and Puyo Puyo. Fun. At this point, Tiger Telematics were hemorrhaging money. All of the wasteful spending and failing advertisements didn't help. But it also didn't help that the company sent money to companies to develop for the train wreck that conveniently got canceled, or in most cases, went out of business. That doesn't sound fishy at all. Then October 2005 rolled around, and a Swedish press paper was released, which did some digging into Tiger Telematics' finances and found some dubious behavior. For one, it was ever so quietly exposed that executive Stefan Eriksson and 2 others had previous dealings in the little-known venture capital known as the Swedish Mafia. You heard me. He had connections with the mob. And once that was known, all the dirty laundry came tumbling out. Previously 10-year prison sentences, fraud from shell developers giving money, counterfeiting, and the fact that another executive had an active warrant. With all this out in the open, and people waiting to reclaim their already stolen money, it's not surprising that multiple executives resigned from the company and board, including Eriksson and even Carl Freer himself, who had his own fraud cases looming around him. The Gizmondo ended up not lasting a full year, because after $300 million in piling up debt, Tiger Telematics declared bankruptcy, starting with his Europe branch on January 23, 2006, with the Swedish and American arms following suit. The Gizmondo was officially dead. So what happened afterwards to these crazy bunch of characters? Well, Stefan Eriksson, inspired by the destruction of his dear project, decided to go straight, get his life together, and get deported from America after crashing his Ferrari while driving intoxicated and on drugs. Whoops. Well, you can't accuse the Gizmondo of not being ambitious. So much stuff was thrown into one handheld to try and compete with the Emperor, and the only thing that happened was a glorious drug-fueled crash and burn. Do you think if the company didn't completely botch the build-up and launch of this console, it would have had a better fate in regards to sales? Well, no.
Nope.
No. I'm pretty sure this console was doomed to fail from the beginning. Even if the Gizmondo had competent leadership, the lack of games would probably be a death sentence around the GBA or the upcoming PSP, and nothing about the console would have saved it from its fate. Sorry to you Sticky Balls fans, but you'll never find a better meme than saying a video game console was funded by the Mafia. This console gets 1 car wreck out of 5.
Get ready on the cube, stick them balls. Look for a color and get them all. Sticking the balls is the thing that you're after. Get the wrong color and you cause a disaster. What you need to do is get a real high score. Stick them all together, you want a little more? Power up, extra shot, crystal clear. Get these things You make me wanna cheer.
So what is Clock Tower? So first off, I'm a complete baby with horror games. Not like, ooh, jump scare, I'm so terrified, hold me. More like, oh man, the door slammed behind me. I don't know what's up with that, but I'm out of here. Wait, wasn't this shelf over there before? You're trying to trick me, game, and I'm not falling for it. Ah! A game only needs to do so much, and my anxiety will take the lead and drive that shit all the way home. Resident Evil? Nah, I can handle that. Clock Tower? I will shit my pants on this microphone. Clock Tower was released in 1995 on the Super Famicom. I specify Super Famicom and not the Super Nintendo because this game was never released in the US initially, instead coming to the Western world as part of an updated port called Clock Tower: The First Fear, which was released on PlayStation, Windows, and some sort of Etch-a-Sketch in 1997. Of course, this Clock Tower is not to be confused with its similarly titled sequel, Clock Tower, released in 1996 in Japan as Clock Tower 2, but was technically the first Clock Tower released in the States. Yep, this series got Final Fantasied in the naming convention. Clock Tower is a point-and-click survival horror game in which you control Jennifer, this milquetoast girl who, along with 3 other Madeline ripoffs, are adopted by a billionaire named Simon Barrows. They are taken to his majestic, not satanic murder house by Miss Mary, the wife, maybe? Where shit gets creepy real quick with lights suddenly turning on and off, random screaming, and maybe finding your fellow adopted sister strung up dead in the bathroom. Huh, wonder how she got there. Oh my god! This ugly bastard is the main threat of the game, the Scissor Man, who will stalk you all across the mansion, trying to take a little too much off the top. The Scissor Man can pop out of boxes, random doors, the ceiling, all for the purpose of poking holes through Jennifer. And with that existential storm of Damocles hanging above you, have fun exploring. The controls for this game are weird. Point-and-click games work best with the PC because of the free-moving mouse structure. And although you still control a pointer, just with a control pad, you also still control Jennifer using the shoulder buttons. This can be really awkward to use when you are trying to direct Jennifer to pick up something on the table, but instead she's running full steam ahead against a wall. And oh look! Scissor Man is here to come play too. Your first time playing this game, you'll usually fall into the similar cycle. Run around, lock door, run around, lock door, pick up item, death, lock door, death. Oh, I found a key, death. What's in the fridge? Bugs! The entire game turns into a puzzle. Explore everywhere you are available to, picking up any items you can find. Use said items to either open up new rooms or solve puzzles to gain access to something useful or plot, all the while avoiding Mr. Chop Chop. One aspect of this game is there are multiple paths to follow. Depending on your actions, you can end up doing different routes through the mansion, finding different dead orphan sisters, finding different aspects of the plot, and most importantly, different endings. There are multiple good and bad endings, and thankfully the game keeps track of the ones you achieve, so you can quick start your way into another playthrough to try and take a different course of action. This is, however, if you actually want to go through the game again. The controls can be super frustrating, especially when trying to avoid the Scissor Man. When Jennifer gets spooked, her portrait starts to change colors from blue to yellow if tense, to red if she's having a full-blown panic attack. This is essentially her composure, because if Jennifer reached panic mode, yes, she'll finally move faster, but now she'll bust her ass if you run too much, and if she gets confronted by the Scissor Man, or any other horror from the mansion, including herself in the mirror for some reason, you'll have to mash the panic button to either get away or end up reaching a dead end. What amount of panic button hitting needed is kind of subjective. Just know when that portrait gets to flashing, pummel it for your life. The story ends up all over the place too. Not to spoil the entire thing, but you'll probably need a wiki after you beat the game to understand what you just played. However, if you don't mind some clunkiness and enjoy a tense-filled experience, I advise giving this game a try. And after finally beating this, I feel like I can finally move on from this childhood fear of mine. I should be good in... This game gets 3 scissors out of 5. Whee! Whee! Leave me alone, Chad. I'm having fun. So what is Batman? The video game.
It's here. Batman, the video game. From Sunsoft. For the Nintendo Entertainment System. Let the battle begin.
Batman is the cash cow that keeps on giving. You slap Batman on your property, and more than likely, you're going to see a profit. That's a difference from the rest of the DC right now, which is a complete dumpster fire. Toys, movies, embarrassing clothes, all with Batman's mawky face on it. This game isn't the first, but damn if it isn't one of the best games featuring the Caped Crusader. Batman the video game was released in 1989 by Sunsoft and released further on the Game Boy, Sega Genesis, and PC Engine. This game was loosely based upon the 1989 movie of the same name, keeping the overarching plot of Joker doing something stupid and Batman chasing after him like James Gunn in the DC fanbase, but adding in regular enemies and other things to not make the game super boring. You control Robert Pattinson as he makes his way through 5 different levels, each with 3 to 4 sections of platforming, dudes, and environmental hazards. Holy shit! You walk around punching like only Batman does, and actually platform Ninja Gaiden style by hanging on the walls and jumping on the platforms. Unlike Ninja Gaiden, Batman's platforming is a little tighter, and he won't snap into walls that come into his immediate vicinity, so it feels a lot more controlled, though you can't scale walls like Ryu Hayabusa. This still won't stop Michael Keaton from accidentally jumping off platforms frequently, though there's a lot less instant death pits in this game. George Clooney isn't alone with the fist, however. On top of enemies dropping bussy emblems, which will give you points, they also drop ammo for Val Kilmer's weapons, which includes the Batarang, Bat Disc, and the Batpoon, which totally doesn't kill anyone cause non-lethal pellets, see? Each weapon shoots in its own arc and has differing range, all of which cost different amounts of ammo. The enemies themselves aren't too challenging, either being gormless goons who just run forward or specifically position themselves to be at the edge of the platform you are just trying to jump to. Something I found out while doing this video is that most of these regular enemies are actual Ben Affleck villains just copy-pasted, such as Deadshot, Heatwave, KG Beast, and a few more. Not bosses, whose lineups include Killer Moth, Firebug, and Joker himself, but just regular enemies. Guess you can tell where they ended up on the totem pole. Anyway, something that I haven't mentioned yet is that this game is actually really hard. You have a life bar that can be depleted quickly due to both enemies and hazards, and the game is a little stingy with the life pickups. You are given 2 lives and then game over, though the game starts you off at the last non-boss section, so you aren't given too much of a penalty. This will motivate you to pick yourself back up and get smeared by the next cheap enemy or boss coming your way, not to mention some of the hazards that actually feel cheaply unavoidable, similar to Ninja Gaiden. This builds up to a pitch with the later bosses, some which will cause you to pull your hair out. But besides this, the game is actually damn good, especially in an age where movie games weren't expected to be more than cheap shovelware. The graphics are actually really nice for the platform, the cutscenes are damn polished, and if you don't enjoy this absolute banger of a soundtrack, Kevin Conroy will haunt your nightmares, may he rest in peace. A damn fine addition. to anyone's NES library. This game gets 4 Batmans out of 5. Can you drop a heart for me, please? I don't want to do this again. Yes, thank you. Answer my prayers. No, don't go away. No! Come on. So what is Ninja Gaiden?
Like a ghost in the moonlight, the ninja warrior stalks his prey. Unseen, unheard, and unnoticed. Mission accomplished. The final battle begins. Ninja Gaiden for Nintendo from Tecmo. Coming soon.
NES hard was an entirely different type of hard. Games this time weren't overly long due to technology and standard, which was different from the coin feeding model of the arcade. So most of the time, developers just made the games balls hard to compensate. Back then, this was absolute brutality, but most of them are looked upon fondly now and receive lots of sequels because apparently most of our shared childhood experiences include Stockholm Syndrome. But did you know, not everything hard is also good. Just look at Bayou Billy. Some hard games are tolerable because the experience is worth the pain and overall it isn't overly cruel. Some games, however, just make your experience absolutely miserable with the difficulty, which can be due to many factors. This next game might ruin your childhood, so if you are easily squeamish, you might want to look away now. Please don't, I'll appreciate the views. Ninja Gaiden was released in 1988 on both the NES and arcades, though each game differs on gameplay style. The arcade version was more of a classic beat 'em up. Meanwhile, the more notable NES version, the subject of this wasted time video, is an action platformer. This is also not to be confused with Ninja Gaiden game on the original Xbox, called Ninja Gaiden. Yep, Tecmo was so creative. You are Ryu Hayabusa, a junior ninja who starts out the game trying to find out what happened to his father, who suffers from a bit of a dead at the hands of another ninja in the opening cutscene. This plot evolves into government conspiracies, secret organizations, mythical possession, falling in love with strangers, and whatever the hell this is. You control Ryu across 6 worlds, running from one side of the screen to the other, slashing enemies with your sword, and trying not to fall in pits. Now at first glance, you might be thinking, hey, this kinda looks like Castlevania. Well, you'll be making a case for Konami to swing the lawsuit hammer. But Ninja Gaiden is different, see? The pace of the game is much faster. You can also break these bugs for pickups that are either point related, weapons, or refills for those weapons. No comment. So yeah, if you played Castlevania, this shouldn't be too difficult to grasp. Make it to the end of the levels, conveniently broken up into sections. Kill enemies, try not to let your health bar empty out completely before you fight the boss at the end of the world. Gather sub-weapons, use said sub-weapons, and get murked by these birds that drain 3 points of health. Dear Jesus! And fall into pits again and again and again. What sets Ninja Gaiden apart, really, breaks down into 3 factors: the platforming, the in-depth story, and the difficulty. Platforming in this game is a lot more robust than Castlevania. Ryu is able to jump, but not as stiff as Simon Belmont does, which leads to a lot more acrobatic dodging and maneuverability. He is also able to hang on the walls and scale up buildings if you're skilled enough with the jumping. This lends positive to speed runs and shows a contrast to Castlevania, where you are more stiff, but are better able to defend yourself. Ryu does have a sword, but the range is small, which leads to being up close and personal to demons trying to hurt you. The sub-weapons include ninja stars and fire, which gives Ryu some space from the monstrosities. You'll end up using the sub-weapons and maneuverability to quickly make your way through levels, creating a different dynamic than Castlevania. You still fly backwards if you get hit though, so oh well. Also, you grapple to walls if you jump towards them automatically, whether you want to or not, so more often than not, you will accidentally grapple to something you didn't want to while fighting enemies. What makes the story notable isn't the actual story. I mean, ninja, demons, you can figure out the plot. What is special is the game actually has cutscenes that look really nice for the age. The graphics are decent in the main game, but the cutscene pictures honestly bring a lot of life to the story. Not many NES games actually do this, so this is highly appreciated. And last off, the difficulty. This game is like discussing your feelings as a teenager. Hard as hell. Attacks knock you back super easy. Pits are everywhere, enemies fly in these strange arcs that are hard to hit. It's just all bad. These fucking birds are the bane of players' existence. Like, go the fuck away. Go away. Go away! You only get a certain amount of lives, and when they are gone, it's game over, and you have to start over in the beginning of the section you're in. Which is really annoying, but not the end of the world. The bosses can be a little difficult as well, but repeatedly throwing yourself at them till you get their pattern will solve your problem soon enough. That is, until you get the 5-4. This guy is extremely difficult to kill due to this homing attack coming right for you, and once you die, you get sent back to 5-3 even if you have lives left, which is fucking annoying. Why won't it let you continue with the boss? Up to this point, the difficulty was high but not maddening, but this is truly infuriating. You only get one shot at the boss, and with his attack pattern, it's hard to even try to nail it down before he mauls you to death. But if you wish upon a star and act good throughout the year like a good little boy or girl, you'll luckily beat him. At which you learn that he was the guy who killed Ryu's father. Oh wait, now he didn't kill him and your father is alive. Alright, now you're at stage 6-1 and holy shit, the bullshit dial has been turned to 11. Enemies are everywhere and will not hesitate to shoot or otherwise drain your health. And even if they won't do it, the pits will. Even worse, some of the enemies are positioned in a way which will interfere with platforming. And again, the walls are positioned in such a way that even when you don't want to cling on to them, you will accidentally all the fucking time. So you make it to the final boss eventually. And oh no, it's your possessed dad, I think. You get your health restored, and you try to free him from the control of this evil god, gangster, whatever, and shit. I died. Where does that put me? Nah. 6-1? You gotta be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. If you die at the final boss at any time, it doesn't put you outside the boss door. It doesn't put you back at 6-3 like the previous world did. You start all the way over at 6-1. That is complete horseshit. No, I'm mad now. All the little annoyances of this game combined in the last world that truly make finishing this game a fucking slog. So now you have to drag your ass across all the levels again, falling into pits, game over, game fucking over, till you reach the final boss again. And what the fuck is this? Why didn't it refill my health this time? Oh, you are truly playing games with me. If you die at the final boss, fuck you, I guess. No more health refills. Like, why? What the hell is your major malfunction, game? And guess what? Even if you beat your demon dad, there's still the final fight against the leader. And if you die against him, fuck you, back to 6-1. At least when you eventually get back, you don't have to fight dear old dad again, instead starting from the second boss fight phase. Still with no health regeneration, mind you, but after much persistence and still reserved, you can beat him with the sliver of health you have left. And then 6-5? Wait, we aren't done yet? Wait, what is that? What is that? I was genuinely enjoying Ninja Gaiden until the last couple of levels. Such bullshit combined with the controls and maddening decisions actively spoiled how I felt about the game. The ending is what you expect anyway. Listen to me. Play the game, and when you reach your wall, stop, get up, turn the game off, and walk away. You'll look so much more fondly on the game then. You'll think of the nice graphics, music, and quicker gameplay as opposed to thinking of when the game kicked you in the balls with a steel-toe boot. This game gets 3 monstrosities out of 5. Watch out! No, father! Ryu, you've got to get them for me. Father! So what is The Lion King?
Bruh.
Trauma. Trauma is a delicate and tragic thing. something that happened maybe years in the past, still affecting you in unintended ways. Constant reminder of the pain that you experienced at that moment and something that shapes you for the future. But it still haunts you. The memories of pain, the shadows of what once happened still surround you as you are again told you aren't free just yet. Your demons are still here, watching, biding its time as you pray to any god you believe in for some measure of peace, freedom, and tranquility. The Lion King was released in 1994, the same year as the movie release, on the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and Amiga, and further ported to more systems in the future, including being the last licensed game released on the NES. In the world of movie-based licensed games, this game is notable for a little-known reason. It's as hard as self-performed surgery. And anyone who's played this back in the day will attest, this game will absolutely crush your spirit. How? Well, get seated. Let me tell you something, young man. The Lion King is a platformer, with you controlling little Simba as he makes his way through the plot of the film level by level. You can jump, which is your primary method of attacking these lizards and bugs, or you can roar. Or meow, actually, which stuns enemies, which is supposed to stun enemies. It's supposed to be more effective the more this roar bar is filled, but honestly, you never really need it, except for one instance. And that's all you need and all you get. Jump through levels, collect bugs, try not to let your health empty out, you're in the clear. Well, for the first level. The second level has no enemies, it's all platforming. And it's the nightmare of any kid who had this game growing up. The second level of this game is a notorious roadblock. Most kids don't even know anything past this level. It's so notoriously hard. It's not even because of enemies, because again, there are no enemies. This level consists of platforming and swinging across animals, which wouldn't be too bad, if not because the collision detection is absolutely awful, and more than often, you'll fall into the instant death water. But once you get past that, you end up next to random hippos and monkeys. The hippos and monkeys are actually a pretty simple puzzle that you can adjust by screaming at the monkeys. But that isn't even the worst part. No, you get to also ride an ostrich. And when you ride such ostriches, you have to avoid baby hippos and birds' nests, which I don't know if you can tell, but they are extremely hard to see with this color palette. The first time you go through this section, you get indicators which tell you what to do. But after that, you're on your own, bub. So many lives have been lost in this hellscape. May they rest in peace. Past this level, you go through stages representing movie scenes where you jump on hyenas and other enemies and try not to fall through the platforms themselves. At this point, your lives and continues are probably already spent, so getting all the bugs in the level to trigger a bonus game is essential for continuing on to see the later half of the game. Speaking of, you actually grow into adult Simba after you finish murdering your dad and running away from the scene of the crime. Besides actually having a respectable roar finally, you actually get a melee move. Simba can knock the shit out of enemies with his bare paws, useful for hyenas and sneaky leopards. Other than that, you go through the final stages, usually dying to environmental hazards like lava or rolling boulders until you make it to Scar, at which you let your fist do the talking. To finish him off, you must toss him off Pride Rock, just like the movie. But good luck remembering you actually have a throw command, since you never really use it in the game. The Lion King is a competently put together game, but holy shit, why would they do this to kids? Most children can't even walk in a straight line without peeing themselves. How did you think they were gonna make it through this without bursting into tears? I didn't even beat it for the first time till I was 29 damn years old. That's an injustice that this game can't even hope to atone for. Despite having good MIDI music that you will probably still hum to, like you're watching the entire movie again. This game gets 2 dead Simbas out of 5. So what is the Legend of Zelda No Sword Challenge?
Gee, It sure is boring around here.
My boy, this peace is what all true warriors strive for.
I just wonder what Ganon's up to.
Your Majesty, Ganon and his minions have seized the island of Korodai.
How can we help?
It is written, only Link can defeat Ganon.
Great! I'll grab my stuff!
There is no time. Squadala, we are off!
Adding challenges to classic games breathes new life in some of these cold french fries. Something to change up the classic grind of a game always makes for an interesting experience. Hell, game hacks have existed since regular people could afford computers. Most hacks and challenges usually give the player more freedom than before, in particular removing boundaries and limitations to let the player go wild. Some hacks and challenges add in self-imposed roadblocks just to give you an additional sense of challenges, and also extra necessary hernias to boot. Extra hard enemies, difficult puzzles, all the like. But what happens when your main tool of defending yourself is taken away? The Legend of Zelda is one of the classic Big Three franchises from Nintendo. The adventures of Zelda running around, gathering items, clearing dungeons, and saving Princess Link have been happening ever since the original Legend of Zelda was released in 1986 on the NES. The original is standard for a grid-based adventure game. Gather items all around the map using your sword to kill any enemies you come across. Enter these tunnels and buy things from the shops to help progress the game. Find and complete hidden dungeons. Embrace your inner pyro by setting the entire forest on fire to find hidden passages. Get hidden monies, destroy this man's house and have to pay for the damages. And in the end, fight Ganon the pig and save the princess. All simple enough, right? Even in the base game, there exists an adjusted game called Second Quest, which swaps all the location of things and dungeon layouts, which changes the way you play the game. There exist hundreds of hacks that I can't even get all into. Basically, any way you want to play The Legend of Zelda, you can play it with some searching. So how about playing the game without your main weapon? So in The Legend of Zelda, you start out and immediately placed in front of a cave. In this cave, you find a meme that gives you a sword. This sword is your primary weapon in the game that you use to defend yourself. But what happens if you don't grab it? Then the game at its core is eternally different. For one, how do you get anything? You can't kill enemies with your bare hands. Well, better yet, where do you get any money? No enemies means no drops, which means no rupees, which means no shops, which again means no way to defend yourself. All you can do is run around and avoid enemies and their projectiles. So how to even start this challenge? Well, there's a couple ways, but the best way is going to your local gamble house in the top right hand corner of the map and taking advantage of a fake wall which leads to this dungeon, which hides a hidden moblin with a gift of 100 rupees. Now, while you probably want to waste that money at the casino, I highly recommend you start off with a blue candle. It's a permanent menu item that you won't lose at death, and it's an attack. A really shitty attack that you can only do once per screen, but an attack nonetheless. Also with this, you can now burn bushes, so hopefully you know all the location of the generous moblins with money and heart containers. From here, you try to complete the game as normal. You just might have to stock up more on bombs more often. A few wrinkles though. Money becomes essential, as you'll probably need to get the permanent items like the blue ring and the big shield as soon as possible, and be able to restock on bombs as well. The best way to earn money? Well, you can glitch the money-making game, but that's no fun. Just rough it out on the overworld forehead with the candle like a real hero. But if you want to find an actually good grinding zone, go to Dungeon 2. You know, the one with the snakes. If they see you in a direct line of sight, they will immediately stop what they're doing and charge at you, which, if you are crafty, will send them head first into some fire. Enemies in this playthrough are generally difficult, but Dark Nuts and Wizros in particular will be the absolute end of you. Both can only be affected by bombs early on, and both occupy rooms and dungeons that require you to defeat them all to move on. This leads to a lot of repeated processes of coming in a room, trying to bomb them all, running out of bombs, and leaving to stock up and repeat. This gets old really fast. Dungeon 5 is a legit almost game-breaking experience with this. If you find any bomb upgrades, get them immediately. The goal of this game isn't even to beat Ganon. No, the real goal is to get the magical rod. If you get the rod, you win. Good job. The rod, besides giving you a projectile attack, can physically hurt enemies if they are touched by it, similar to a sword. Not just a regular sword, mind you, but the white sword. With this, the game is basically just vanilla Legend of Zelda, besides the Wizrobes. They still fuck you up and aren't affected at all by the wand. You truly achieve victory in this run by making it to the final fight with Ganon. Since Ganon absolutely requires a sword poke to be defeated, there is no possible way to fight him without it. So take your victory lap, grab the white sword or the magical sword, and kick his ass. This whole challenge's strategy and lore was built up ever since the game's initial release, starting from the question of, hey, can I not get the sword? And oh wow, I wonder how far I can get without it. It's a simple premise, but it's decently challenging to keep you occupied for a while, and I recommend everyone try it at least once, though the difficulty can be rough. I'm looking straight at you, Dungeon 5. And hey, if it becomes too difficult, you can always try clipping through blocks like a dirty cheater. This challenge gets 4 Wizrobes out of 5. Welcome, and there it is. There we are. Now what's down here? Pay me for the door repairs. You just took my $1. Screw you. Oh, I hit myself. So what is DuckTales?
Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a duck blur. Might solve a mystery or rewrite history. DuckTales, woo! Every day they're out there making DuckTales, woo! Tales of daring, do bad and good. DuckTales, woo!
DuckTales was released in 1989 on the NES, with a port on the Game Boy following in 1990. This Capcom platformer is based upon the TV show of the same name, with the adventures of Scrooge McDuck and his nephews Huey, Dewey, and Louie hunting after treasure and thwarting the efforts of the equally greedy Flintheart Glumgold. DuckTales is a classic spin-off from the Donald Duck family of cartoons and has been critically acclaimed from the classic to even the modern reboot.
Donald Duck.
Uncle Scrooge.
Uncle Scrooge?
Which I highly recommend. Give it a look. The classic also came out during the heyday of Nintendo, and also when Capcom was on fire with their Mega Man platformers and eventually other Disney property games. So it was a match made in heaven. You control Uncle Scrooge himself as he goes through 5 different levels hunting for treasure to pad his bank account. Besides the standard jump, Scrooge carries around a cane, which he can use to whack blocks to the side and also bounce on the cane to destroy blocks and enemies beneath it, whichever it is. The goal is to find a treasure at the end of each level after defeating a cartoon character boss, with smaller diamonds and bigger treasure hidden along the way to increase your fortune. These levels are non-linear, with the player able to choose what level they want to do at a time, and which generally don't require completion of others first, besides having to backtrack for specific items 2 specific times. Scrooge is supported by his nephews, of course, but also side characters from the show, including Webby, Launchpad, and even the Caveman Duck. These characters provide hints, early exit from levels, and even items that will help you progress. Of course, some familiar characters also appear as enemies, alongside the generic animals, environmental hazards, and such, hoping to empty Scrooge's life bar so he loses a life. This can be prevented with health-refilling ice cream found about the level. Extra lives are also spread everywhere, and even health bar expanding stars, which too are hidden through the levels. After beating all 5 end bosses, Scrooge is summoned back to Transylvania level, at which time he goes back to the previously beaten boss area, which now houses the final boss, Dracula Duck. Beat him and win a foot race against Flintheart to the treasure, and you're rich. This game actually has 3 endings. A normal one you get if you end the game filthy rich, and one you get if you end the game flat broke, which oddly enough is the hardest one of all to achieve. Pro tip: since getting the end level treasures is unavoidable, you have to make use of a hidden feature, which is If you press the select button while you have 3 million of cash to burn, you can refill your health. So getting exactly 6 million in cash is the preferred method to go flat broke. So you might see 5 levels and think, huh, that's kinda short. Well, it is. Though I may have my modern glasses on a bit. Even the original Super Mario Bros. Had 8 worlds of 4 levels each. I know these levels have a bit more meat on the bone, but still. I also have an issue with the controls, as deploying the cane can be frustrating in certain instances. And since you need the cane to traverse to certain areas, it can cause a lot of accidental deaths. Thankfully, these faults don't greatly damage what was one of Capcom's best-selling games in the era. The levels, as small as they are diverse and fun with great sprite work and excellent, I mean excellent music. This game was so great, it was remastered with high-res graphics and voice acting in 2013 for modern consoles. So take your pick of how to play this game just as long as you play it. This game gets 4 treasures out of 5. So what is Mega Man X? Ow. Ow. Fucker. Ow. Oh, good. Oh, it's an instant death. Okay, cool. For some reason, I decided to go after life on an instant death trap. That's cool. The jump from NES to Super Nintendo was beneficial to a lot of series, and detrimental to others. The first-party games from Nintendo all fared well, with Mario, Zelda, and Metroid providing breakout hits. Some third-party series also made the jump relatively unscathed, like Final Fantasy, Ghosts 'n Goblins, and Castlevania. One that absolutely outdid itself though? Mega Man. No, not that one. Still good though. Mega Man X was released in 1993 for the Super Nintendo by everyone's favorite Street Fighter on the block, Capcom. Technically, this is a spin-off from the NES Mega Man series, with the setting being 100 years in the future. Here, you are X, not technically Mega Man, but close enough. X was discovered in a capsule buried under copies of E.T. for the Atari 2600 and was shown to be a robot with emotions and a high level of intelligence. X and Dr. Kane, the person who discovered X, combined their intelligence to duplicate X's unique traits in similar androids, nicknamed Reploids. And before long, that design is the standard for all produced robots. But you can't give anything free will before some of them decide to be dicks. So some Reploids turn evil and are marked Mavericks. So in response, more Reploids are assembled to be a police force against these renegades called the Maverick Hunters, naturally. One of the headliners of this task force was an advanced Reploid immune from being turned bad named Sigma, who led the Hunters across a successful campaign to bring these ne'er-doers under his boot. Nah, just kidding. He turns evil, recruits a majority of the Maverick Hunters, and flies away to his private island to plan the genocide of humanity. Whoops. From here, a guilty, non-combat ready X and unturned badass Hunter Zero must go at it alone, taking care of all the Mavericks and at the end, Sigma himself. Mega Man X retains the basic frame of a Mega Man game, with X going after 8 different Mavericks who are at the end of their respective theme levels, using his Mega Buster gun and any powers he receives from the previously defeated bosses. Once done, X will assault Sigma's base, composed of multiple levels and bosses, including previously defeated Mavericks, whose power you've already stolen. This is straight out of the Dr. Wily playbook, and might turn some off with how it sounds repetitive, but this is where the intro stage comes in. An intro stage to a Mega Man game sounds redundant, but this actually helps the game out a lot by showing the player the basic functions X can do naturally without outright telling the player. For example, X is deployed to a highway to stop a Maverick attack, and after getting used to running and gutting through the small enemies like the previous game, and defeating a carrier, you fall through a collapsed floor without any way to get up. Or do you? One of the major new additions is the ability to jump on and scale walls, which come in handy immediately. After this, you're confronted by General Vile on a Gundam and get your ass beat and have to be saved by Zero. But oh well. From here, you finally get your choice of robot mask Maverick to face. Unlike the NES games, these guys actually have names that don't end in man. though some of their names are pretty weird, primarily looking at you, Boomer Quanger. Each level is rendered in absolutely beautiful sprite work, which was sorely needed after the previous 6 games retained the same basic look, and the music makes full use of the Super Nintendo sound capabilities. Shout out to the Armored Armadillos theme, my favorite. You control X as he steadily gets stronger through the game, gaining weapons that are specialized against another Maverick, till you can turn the tables on Vile and save Zero to, let's say, mix results, and save the world. The boss weapons aren't all you can get though. Throughout the levels you can find heart tanks which expand X health bar, and sub-tanks which replace E-tanks from the NES game and allow X to store additional health if his own health bar is filled. Also hidden are these upgrade pods, left by the ever so resourceful Dr. Light, which give X additional skills such as improved defense, dashing, and block breaking. From here, and with certain conditions filled, if you find the last hidden pod, Dr. Light gives X a fucking Hadouken. Yes, the projectile from Street Fighter is obtainable in this game, and it kicks ass. Mega Man X is everything you could ever want in a sequel, especially for the Mega Man franchise, which made so little progress in the NES era, it could be reclassified as a sloth. Better graphics, better sound, better gameplay, better story, everything. If there is a glaring fault to this game, then I have to say it's probably the short length, which it shares with most others in the series. If that doesn't bother you, however, and you haven't played this yet, absolutely go after it. You won't regret it. This game gets 5 mechanical monstrosities out of 5. Let's go! So what is Rise of the Robots?
Rise of the Robots explodes onto Super NES. 32 megs of cyborg combat. Revolutionary 3D graphics. Rise of the Robots for Super NES from Acclaim.
In the middle of the year 2023, I just want to remind everyone that graphics aren't everything. A game could look absolutely amazing with 8K graphics and still play like sewage water. A pretty hen will always be appealing. But if that hen doesn't ever lay any eggs, what are you even doing? What even is this metaphor anymore? I don't know. Anyway, Rise of the Robots. Rise of the Robots was released in 1994 by Time Warner Interactive. It was initially developed to be released on the Amiga series of computers, but was also ported to the DOS, 3DO, Game Gear, Mega Drive, not the Genesis, and the Super Nintendo, which is the version we are focusing on today. A one-on-one fighter, you control Cyborg, a blue humanoid android, to do battle with 6 other increasingly stronger enemies. Yeah, you start off fighting simple loading droids, but you'll move on to harder construction droids, and then other humanoid droids that will wreck you easily enough. The game makes a big grand gesture about enemies having high AI intelligence, and learning that has never been seen in any other fighting game at the time, and they certainly learn to wreck you consistently. By the way, no continues. You lose, and you are back to the beginning. Harsh. The graphics are honestly amazing for the time. Every character is rendered really well in the 3D style sprites that actually move fluidly. Every frame of animation looks very well polished, and although the backgrounds are a little bland, they do make the detailed characters stand out. And in the beginning and in between fights, you're treated to honestly advanced looking cutscenes for the time. I mean, for the time, they still aren't very good in 144p, but they show your opponent's stats and them lumbering their way to the fight. So that's good. And that's everything nice I have to say about Rise of the Robots. The fighting in this game is clunky as hell. The programmers clearly prioritize graphics over gameplay, and it shows as soon as you press start. You have your standard kicks and punches, but with all the animation, all the moves feel like you're swinging in slow motion. The long frames also continue even if your opponent recovers, so they can abuse you before you can even finish your attack. Too often matches devolve into spam fest of jump kicks and corner guard, and since there are no combos implemented, it's all free work. Also, do you like the main character? Good, because if you are the first player, that's all you'll be playing as. You literally cannot play as any other character besides the main character in the game, unless you are player 2 in versus mode. Player 1 still doesn't get a choice there, just the Cyborg. Each character is given 2 special moves, but don't get excited. The Cyborg gets a Soda Rush and anti-air headbutt that does nothing. Fun. Also, that smart AI the game brags about, the one that makes enemies hard to even do damage to, it's literally the game cheating. And it's not just me being consumed with salt saying that. The AI reads your inputs and uses that to calculate their next move. So if you find something working in a fight, then the game will literally cheat off your controller and spam respawn, mostly with specials. But that's in-game. Is there anything else that highlights this game? Well, you have 1-player mode, 2-player mode, and options. And that's it. Yay, fun! Oh, but the game makes a big deal on the box about having music from Queen guitarist Brian May, so that's awesome. All few seconds of it before it devolves into standard mediocre game music and sounds. Where exactly is the fun in this game? Rise of the Robots is not a good game. So not good, perhaps, that it could possibly join the pantheon of legends known as the worst Super Nintendo games. Who knows if it could top that mountain, but for now, let's just give this game its due for being the Windows 8 of fighting games. This game gets 1 broken Furby out of 5. So what is Shovel Knight? Shovel Knight was released in 2014 by Yacht Club Games, first for the Wii U and 3DS, and pretty much everything else afterwards. A deliberate retro platformer in the style of Mega Man, Castlevania, and Ninja Gaiden, Shovel Knight takes those concepts and packages them in a game that honestly, if you haven't given it a look by now, you need to immediately, as soon as you can. Shovel Knight is a platformer in which the titled Shovel Knight is on a mission to find his friend, the Shield Knight, and defeat the evil Enchantress and her gang of various cartoon character knights using, well, a shovel. But this shovel is magical. You can use the shovel to attack enemies, jump better a la DuckTales on the NES, and dig for treasure. Treasure and loot is a big part of this game. As with the money you can get, you can buy upgrades and weapons that will improve your chances out in the level themselves. Shovel Knight is a fun platformer. The mechanics are smooth and isn't too frustrating, but at the same time isn't too easy to not be a challenge. The pixel art is beautiful on all the levels, and the characters are wide and varied. The game isn't too terribly long, but there are certain mechanics that can have you going back to find all the secrets you can find in each level. Another positive aspect about this game, the music. The music especially fits with the retro vibe, while also being very bop heavy. This game was so popular, it has been given multiple Game of the Year awards in 2014, and even spawned an entire franchise, with spin-offs and prequels aplenty, and even receiving a nod from Nintendo itself in the form of a cameo appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and in amiibo form. So yeah, I know I probably don't need to convince you, but please play this game right now. This game gets 5 shovels out of 5. So what is the Oregon Trail? If you enjoyed the Oregon Trail, you should take a look at the Oregon Trail. Get the pun? Oregon Trail was released first on the web as a Flash game in 2010, then upgraded and released on PC and mobile in 2012. It's a parody on the original educational game, The Oregon Trail. But on top of surviving a trek out west, you also have to survive zombies. It was developed by the Men Who Wear Many Hats, which is the company organized by the original Flash game creators. The game adopts many of the same concepts as the Oregon Trail. You and 4 other survivors are trekking across the land to an end goal destination, traveling across different cities and landmarks while keeping your compatriots alive and healthy from disease. You scavenge and trade with traders for food and supplies, and try and keep your transportation running. Except now you aren't in the 1800s, and the main threat of getting ate by zombies is ever present. Zombies make their appearance in standard random events, during when you hunt for food, or even in your own ride if you let a zombified character munch on you. So on top of diseases possibly killing each character, you also have to worry about zombies biting them and them becoming ticking time bombs unless you decide to actually put them down yourself. Such is the moral quandary with the additional gameplay aspect of the Oregon Trail. So what else is new? Well, like in most zombie apocalypses, you also have to deal with bandits who will not hesitate to kill you either on the road or even when you're hunting. What's more frightening than bandits? Boss fights, including a giant zombie bear. Take your pick. This game also has extensive game customization, with multiple roles able to be chosen, vehicles to be unlocked, and length and difficulty adjustments to be made to personalize your experience. There is even an endless mode if you want to see how far you can really make it in a zombie apocalypse. And with the many in-jokes and references to popular horror and apocalyptic franchises, this game is a delight to play and is worth checking out if you are the slightest bit interested in an expanded Oregon Trail adventure. This game gets 4 zombies out of 5. So what is Quest 64?
The mystery, the magic, the game. Quest 64, the new adventure RPG for Nintendo 64. Ooh. Get in or get out.
The Nintendo 64 was well represented in almost every genre of game, even with some of the old partners bolting to work with the fledgling PS1 instead. Can you guess what genre was noticeably absent from the platform? No, screw you. Killer Instinct Gold and Fighter's Destiny was awesome. If you said RPG, you'd be correct. For as legendary as the Super Nintendo was for RPGs, the Nintendo 64 was noticeably bare, with Nintendo's main dealer Squaresoft bolting for Sony's console for the Final Fantasy series. You know what Nintendo got to compete with that? Quest 64. Yeah. Quest 64 was released in 1998 by Imagineer and THQ on the N64. This was the first RPG released for the console. Yes, before 1998, no RPGs existed on the system. And this was the only consolation for those craving those type of games. An action-based RPG, you control Master Brian, an apprentice mage who ventures out in the world to find his father who went after a thief that stole the legendary object of MacGuffin called the Telltale Book. In order to track down his father, Brian, who I need to remind you is a child, must bum it from town to town, fighting random monsters, talking to strangers, and steadily gathering the 4 gems of the elements that were stolen by thieves to satisfy whole kingdoms and keep the environment itself in order. Tough childhood. The gameplay of Quest 64 is split up into field exploration and battle mode. Outside of battle, you can run throughout the world and towns, going into houses and talking to the various locals who may or may not have anything useful to say. Unlike most RPGs, there is no money in this world, meaning no shops to buy equipment. Since you don't equip any armor or weapons, the only other thing you can gain in the world are items, which you can get from many chests, enemy drops, or even given to you if you ask someone real nice. These items are almost all used inside battle, such as healing HP, healing MP, boosting stats, escaping from battle, etc. The only items made strictly for out of battle are the various wings you can receive, which insta-teleport you back to previously visited towns. Random encounters can happen at any time outside of towns and buildings, at any moment. You could be walking peacefully and with no transition whatsoever, bam, battle music starts and you're facing various abominations. When battles start, you are immediately surrounded by 2 wired barriers, one blue and one yellow, and your enemies. The blue barrier represents your movement space, which you can move all about until you use a move or in your turn. And the yellow represents the battle area, which stays static until you end turn outside of it, at which point you can run from the battle. But yeah, battle. You can use each of the 4 elements and the expanded spell tree to attack or cast a support spell. For example, at the start, you can use fire, which is a straight line ball of fire, earth, which is a long range splash attack, water, which is a close range power attack, and wind, a multi-hit homing attack. As you defeat enemies, you'll eventually get enough experience and will be prompted to level up one of the elements. Each element goes from 1 to 50, and each time you level up, you can increase the level one at a time. As each element levels up, the spells get more powerful, and at certain levels, new spells will unlock, such as more attacks, self-healing, status attacks, buffing, and debuffing. You can also smack the shit out of enemies with your stick if you're close enough, but it's not recommended long term. You can also level up your elements by finding these little white spirits in the overworld. They trigger an instant level up, but good luck seeing them sometimes if it isn't completely obvious because the graphics can get you lost. Unless you grind, you have to pick and choose what elements to prioritize putting points in. Enemies are all based around the elements as well, so you have your strengths and weaknesses, but the important priority are the new spells you can learn. I can tell you right now, water is the safest bet to prioritize first. Why? It's the only magic tree with a healing spell. Unless you level up water, you're left with depending on items to heal HP, which besides some NPCs that will give you only 1 if you don't have any, are finite depending on hidden chests and enemy drops. All of the other elements have their own advantages and disadvantages, but besides water, you should really try and specialize in one other element, rock, trust me, and every now and again, give points to the others. So that's how you level up your magic. Now, what about your other stats? Cause you know, this is an RPG, so what about everything else? Well, have you heard of a little game called Final Fantasy II? If you just felt a cold shudder going down your back, your feelings are justified. Cause just like Final Fantasy II, each stat is leveled up individually depending on your actions. Wanna raise your defense? Let the enemy beat the crap out of you. Wanna raise your agility? Run around the overworld in a circle like an idiot. And yes, all of the stats are like that, and yes, it's very annoying. This isn't helped that the game feels like a tape on repeat. Go to the next area, fight random battles, find town, go to the dungeon, fight the boss, and repeat. No, literally, the game is really just like this. This isn't as grating if you take breaks between playing, but trying to play this game in long stretches will cause you to react with pain whenever another random battle pops up. The lack of reason to explore except for healing items and spirits outright handicaps this game, which, when added on to the overall grind, holds this game back from being a standout on the platform, which is why RPGs in general just weren't notable on the Nintendo 64. While the soundtrack helps you bear with the mindless grind, being in fear of playing the game isn't something the game should brag about. But if you have a guide to help you, you should help yourself to the wonderful world of L-Tale. This game gets 2 spirits out of 5. Fudge. No, I did the wrong spell. Oh shit. I might die here. Fuck me. I have to go back to the beginning. So what is Little Samson?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. I have this to offer you.
And this is...
This is the earliest sticker sealed
Little Samson
Nintendo game.
That's pretty amazing.
You ever look at a list of the most expensive games ever and wonder, how in the hell is this worth that much? New and unsealed retro games in this age are understandable for being pricey. Kids in the past would get a new game and literally rip the packaging to shreds to get to the cartridge. Loose expensive games, however, are an entirely separate thing. Between special editions, small productions, and other such factors, some retro games keep or even increase their value as the years go on. One such product, Little Samson on the NES. So why is this piece of metal and plastic more expensive than a lot of people's monthly rent? Well, let's find out. Little Samson was released on the NES in 1992 and made by Takeru and Taito. A side-scrolling platformer, most oftenly compared to Mega Man, Little Samson is an NES hidden gem that is known not so much because of its gameplay, but for its collectability. But that doesn't mean that the gameplay isn't fun or notable. In fact, I would argue that the gameplay is varied enough to help it stand out in the sea of Mega Man-inspired games. The story starts as a dark prince is released from his prison and immediately begins to lay siege to the nearby kingdom. The king, panicking, sends out summons for 4 heroes to stop the threat. Each one of the characters then must go through their own intro level, which helps the player learn the character's individual attributes and moves in order to meet with the king. After a little disagreement between heroes, they all pledge to work together in order to save the world. You have control of each of the 4 characters, who can be changed at will at the player's choice. Each have their own individual health bar, though overall they share lives. The characters include Little Samson, a human boy who can jump far, climb walls, and shoot bells to attack. Kakita, a dragon who can fly and breathe fire. Gom, a golem who moves slow but can tank attacks and hit the hardest in all 4 directions. And KO, a mouse who is fragile but moves quickly and climbs walls and can fit in small spaces that the others can't go, along with the ability to drop bombs. These differences help make Little Samson as a whole stand out, as you can switch characters to best suit the challenge the stage is presenting you. Need to get past an obnoxious jumping section? Why not fly with Kakita? Boss giving you trouble? Lay the smackdown with Gom. These distinct playstyles lead to different experiences per level. When a character dies, they are no longer able to be switched to or chosen again unless all characters die or the level boss has been beaten, except for Samson, as his skills are the bare minimum to beat the game, and without him, you'll probably hit a hard wall you cannot proceed past. This can be prevented by collecting power-ups, such as health restoring hearts, 1-ups, potions that when used can instantly refill a character's health bar, and special spears that can increase the maximum amount of health an individual character can have to a limit if you're playing on normal mode. The individual levels are broad and very detailed, with branching exits existing for a handful of them leading to alternate stages and even alternating bosses. They all end up converging for each of the sub-bosses, however, which are the direct generals of the Dark Prince. These characters have 2 phases, with a normal form and a monster form at the ready, which can lead to some unfortunate experiences when your main fighter Gom gets defeated on the first phase of the boss, and now you're left with Samson and Glass Cannon KO for a giant dragon. But overall, the challenge keeps the game fun, and the flexibility in stage and character choice makes this game a rather versatile experience that you most likely will not own physically on your NES unless you get a bootleg. So why is this game dumb expensive nowadays? Well, due to the late release in the NES lifecycle and little promotion, it sold very poorly in North America. As a result, the NTSC version of the game is worth in the thousands, even to this day, with the loose price being worth approximately $2,000 and untouched in a sealed box being worth more than your car. However, if you have the opportunity to play this game with less scrupulous means, I say do so, as Little Samson is a fun experience. The game is rather short, but replayability is fairly interesting for a game of this era, such as using characters on levels you normally wouldn't use or going a different route to a sub-boss. Such a shame that this game was initially ignored, as the game becoming popular then would probably lead to less people shilling out house payments for it now. This game gets 4 buckets of money out of 5. Yay! Oh, there he is. Hi, buddy. Did we do it? We did it! Yeah! So what is Street Fighter 2010, The Final Fight? Might have to cut my losses and just leave if the portal opens up. Oh, there's health. Where's the portal? Oh, fuck. I don't know where it's at. Ah, there it is. No! Ho, 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 ho! Come on! Everyone is playing their modern Street Fighter 6 and having fun, I guess. What about the classics? Let's go back to Street Fighter 2. Forget your modern controls and absolutely get wrecked by Sagat every time. Matter of fact, let's get back to Street Fighter 1, where the racial stereotypes run wild. Maybe you're the one weird person who prefers Street Fighter EX series. And in which case you are, go back to the sewers, you mutant. But have you ever seen the hidden sequel in the Street Fighter series? One that most people don't even know exists? Welcome to the land of Street Fighter 2010, The Final Fight. Street Fighter 2010 The Final Fight was released for the NES in 1990 by Capcom, a spin-off of the mainline fighting series. This game came out after the first game was released in 1987, but before its boom after the release of Street Fighter 2 in 1991. It took, let's say, minor liberties with the story after the first game. After the Street Fighting tournament, Ken, or Player 2 in the first game, retired from fighting and became a very successful scientist and came out with special goo that can give people superhuman strength. Due to this advancement, Ken's partner in the lab named Troy gets bonked to death, and Ken decides to undergo cybernetic implants in order to go after the one responsible. Since their dirty asses decided to leave drops of the special goo everywhere that Ken could follow. Not gonna spoil the ending cause I know you're dying to learn yourself what happens, but goo gets everywhere. A fighting game, this is not. Instead, Street Fighter 2010 takes on a more action platformer genre. You control Cyber Ken as he goes from level to level, jumping up platforms and shooting anything that dares get close to you. Pickups can be gotten to upgrade your beam up to 5 times to increase its range and also add in additional ways to damage enemies. Getting hit will decrease your attack level by 1, and dying will cause the power bar to reset at the next life. So it can be really irritating to get your power bar to 5 and be able to hit enemies a football field away, just to die, then have a beam the length of your dome. Speaking of enemies, you aren't fighting humans in this bizarre Street Fighter future world. At the beginning of each level, you are given a target that you have to hunt for in the level. The target may appear instantly, or you may have to go exploring for it. Either way, you must use Ken's maneuverability to jump through each level, climb up walls, and take out these weird alien creatures that will get in your way. Once you defeat your target, or targets, depending on the level, Ken gets enough power to jump through a dimensional portal to the next area. However, this portal will not wait on Ken and will disappear in about 9 seconds from spawning in a random spot in the level, which, if you miss, will cost you a life. If you were hoping for a traditional Street Fighter NES, think again, cause this isn't it. As a matter of fact, besides the fact that you are Ken, and in the Japanese version you aren't even Ken, your name is Kevin Stryker. This has absolutely nothing to do with Street Fighter, or Final Fight, which the subtext also includes. If this absolutely destroys you inside, I'm sorry, but if you stick around, you see that this is a pretty competent game overall. The platforming and combat are responsive and can be fun once you get the upgrades you want. Although the story is stupid, it does provide narrative for why you're hunting Kleborp the Spacefly. I think a lot of the scorn for this game wouldn't have happened if it wasn't called a Street Fighter game, but on the flip side of that, if it wasn't called Street Fighter, no one would care about it and it would probably end up as a hidden gem in our time. Still, if you're looking for a fun experience on NES and don't mind batshit B-movie fanfiction based upon that rich blonde guy from the arcade, be sure to give this game a try. This game gets 3 abominations out of 5. Ken, come in, Ken. I read you. I'm on my way. Yeah, Ken. We're going back to the Street Fighter circuit. All is suffer. Yeah. So what is WrestleQuest?
Every wrestling legend follows their own path to fame and glory, but you won't be crowned wrestling royalty without harnessing the power of the masters to ignite your quest. Your rise to stardom begins at the feet of giants, and the only way to earn a legend's respect is
If you're familiar with me, you know on top of being a giant retro nerd who entertains other nerds on the internet like you, I like me some wrestling. As a 90s baby, I have the typical arc of most 90s babies when it comes to wrestling. The Attitude Era hooked me into WWF, watched WWE through most of the Ruthless Aggression era, fell off from wrestling around high school, while occasionally hearing things about TNA through the grapevine, getting wind of a cool little outfit known as NXT in college, binging the full catalog of What Culture videos, and then I was stuck again. You know you're hooked again when you're watching weeklies and staying up till 3 a.m. to watch Japanese wrestling, knowing I have work in the morning. While the simulator games I'm usually pretty lukewarm towards, one game that caught my attention this year is also a wrestling game, a retro wrestling themed RPG. WrestleQuest was released in 2023 by Mega Cat Studios for Steam and Nintendo Switch. In this world of toys, yes, actual toys, you control a variety of characters, starting from the non-union Mexican equivalent Muchacho Man, who seeks to become the best wrestler in the toy box world. From the humble beginnings in wrestling class, you venture throughout the world, gaining allies from other wrestlers and managers to even Transformers, fighting various toys and performing for a variety of promotions in a bid to become champion in the Paw League and unravel the deceitful dark side to the wrestling business. While you start out with just Muchacho Man and his allies, the game actually moves around to the POV of a bunch of varied characters, starting with the heart-inspired Logan family as they make their way through wrestling stardom through different means. These characters eventually branch out and connect with each other, leading to a varied collection of playable characters near the end. RPG is not typically what you think as a genre for a wrestling game, but indie studio Mega Cat Studios made the forbidden combination, and honestly, it works pretty well. When you enter a fight against the scheduled matches or random encounters against overworld foes, you're placed across from your enemies and choose your moves in turn-based combat. Usually, your side of 3 is able to make their move first, followed by the enemies, and so on. So speed doesn't have much of a difference besides who on your team attack first. You can do a standard attack, which use quick time events to determine if you'll get an extra hit in sometimes. You can use an item, use a special attack called a gimmick that can range from a single attack, combination tag team attack with another character, combination trios team attack with both party members, a manager attack if you have one, or you can even summon legendary wrestlers to perform their signature moves on opponents. Now, all that may seem overwhelming, and near the end of the game with all of the characters together, it can be, but you'll find your favorite combinations and some that you'll never really use. Steadily gaining more skills as you level up is at first a motivation for grinding, but eventually it just becomes more and more text that make your eyes glaze over. The last main feature, taunting, adds a defense down effect to the member who uses it, but allows the crowd to get more hype in your favor. Now, what the heck is hype? Well, that's a special feature for this game. As you are a wrestler performing in front of a crowd, you can get the crowd either on your side or the opponent's side by performing taunts or special moves that affect the hype meter. Depending if the hype meter favors you or your opponent, buffs and debuffs are added, and certain moves can be used once your hype reaches a certain level. On certain matches, you'll be given objectives to raise or lower the hype level to a certain amount when you're either portrayed as the good guy or face in a match, or as the bad guy or heel. These side objectives can be for extra spoils or can be mandatory depending on the storyline. Hype can be obtained differently depending on the different hype types chosen by the character, which changes what actions generate hype more than others. But each character typically slots in mostly predetermined subsets. These situations really work well with the wrestling gimmick, and I honestly wish they used it a bit more. Other than that, there are various status effects that last for a certain amount of turns, certain moves that can only be used depending on your karma, which depends on your choices talking to people and making decisions in the story. And on top of knocking people out instantly sometimes, once you drain an opponent's HP, they don't die immediately, instead gaining the fallen status. You can then pin them to completely remove them from the fight. However, if you mess up, your hype takes a hit and they receive some health back. Outside of battle, you can equip your characters with various gear that can affect their stats and give various elemental effects that are applied at the beginning of battle. The visual of the entire world being toys is honestly super charming. It lends itself to the retro-inspired look of the entire game, and when you see the giant statues of the legendary wrestlers, it honestly looks amazing. This game is an old school wrestling fan's wet dream in terms of honoring the greats of yesteryear, most prominently with Macho Man Randy Savage, and references to modern wrestling media. The sprite work looks good on the characters it depicts, and rips off in some cases, and some of the environments look great with accompanying ambient music. Now, some of the other ones may look a little bland and recycled from time to time, but it's not too distracting. What is distracting is how plotting this game can feel at times. There's a whole lot of running through random lands and fighting the same random battles, and like I said before, once you find your favorite combinations, you pretty much stick to them the entire time you use the certain characters. This can get monotonous very quickly after a while, and battles can just start being more of a hassle than they're worth. The game is pretty easy as well. You rarely need to grind, and the only really difficult parts are either early on or because you have required side goals to fulfill to beat a battle, which is also why I wish they implemented it more. The entrance section kind of just seems pointless as well. You gain extra environmental effects and music through the game, but it's so rarely used it never really becomes a curiosity past the first use. Double that for the karma system, though this actually affects what moves you can and cannot perform, but not much. Finally, the taunt is useful for maybe the first section of the game, but it just becomes pointless as well since you can increase hype in different ways depending on the chosen hype type by character. The showman type benefits the most from using it, but it just gets overshadowed very quickly. The game is oddly buggy as well, which the team has acknowledged in some delays to the game, but is noticeable up to the point where I've gotten soft locked a couple of times to, let's say, mild to mid frustration. WrestleQuest is a game of two halves. First impressions are great, and all the lore and wrestling references will have you super excited to continue through the game, but the more you play through, the more your excitement just drains. It's still a good game, and I definitely recommend any retro wrestling fans to check it out, but don't push yourself hard to finish in a certain amount of time. Still, getting to summon Andre the fucking Giant to flip over a ring at any point will never get old. This game gets 3 jobbers out of 5. Why she's so caked up? Yeah, damn! So now my wife has 4 boobs and is caked up? Dude, I'm winning. So what is DuckTales 2?
We invited an expert team to our laboratory to give us their opinions of Disney's DuckTales video game from Capcom.
Yes, awesome.
You'll have exciting adventures helping Scrooge McDuck escape danger and become the richest duck in the world.
Cool. Totally hot. Way radical, man. Excellent. It's a quacker.
Oh! Disney's DuckTales game for your Nintendo Entertainment System by Capcom.
DuckTales 2 was released in 1993 by Capcom, first on the NES, then on the Game Boy. A sequel to the 1990 original, you again control Scrooge in the pursuit of the good old dollar bill.
Here comes the money!
This time, with a hunt for pieces of a treasure map on top of priceless historical artifacts you can get in each level. Like before, you are given 5 levels at the start of the game and are able to pick where you want to go immediately, but with the added bonus of a hidden level if you are able to find all the treasure map pieces. The levels themselves are linear, but with many hidden areas that hide some desirable items like extra lives, health extenders, and many other goodies. Many of Scrooge's family and friends can again be found throughout the levels, and you also face a boss at the end of the level, who when defeated, gives up a special treasure that needs to be added to Scrooge's money pit.
Here comes the money!
In the end, Flintheart Glumgold stands with his weird pet monster, and once you defeat that, you are again given multiple endings depending on how much money you have, and if you found a hidden treasure or not. DuckTales 2 features some notable upgrades from the first game. For one, unlike the last game, you have a secondary objective other than making it to the end of the level. Treasure map pieces are hidden in each area that Scrooge needs to find to unlock the hidden 6th level, which houses the ultimate treasure that you need for the good ending. Now, you might be a little hesitant to finish levels if you haven't found a particular map piece for the area, but in this game, you can actually go back to the previous levels after you defeat the boss, which is different from the first game. In fact, you probably will need to replace stages as some areas can only be accessed after gaining a few new tools provided by Gyro Gearloose, who can be found in some levels. These include the ability to pull heavy objects, pogo previously unbreakable vertical blocks, and a golf swing that can destroy previously unbreakable horizontal blocks. These sections usually hide a map piece, which encourages multiple playthroughs through levels. Also new for this game is after each level, you get directed to a store, which lets you spend the massive amounts of money you found in the level on various goodies like extra lives, continues, useful endgame items, and even a map piece at one point. All of these combine to make the sequel even more enjoyable than the previous version. DuckTales 2 is a major improvement upon the first game, even beyond the new additions. The feel of the game is a lot more friendly to the player. The controls are simplified with the poker deployment in particular, being easier to control than its predecessor. The design of the levels are more intricate as well, with the new ability to replay levels leading to designs that support that function, with many nooks and crannies that aren't immediately apparent to the eye. The great music is also back, though none of the tracks still come to the heights of the Moon theme, but they hold their own all the same. The game is still painfully short, though thankfully the replayability of levels and more objectives make this game longer than the original. Since the game was released at the end of the NES console cycle, it led to lower sales than the original, but if you enjoyed the first game, I definitely recommend the sequel. It's DuckTales, but more. If you're hoping for a massive overhaul, you'll probably be disappointed, but still, DuckTales 2 is worth getting for your NES collection. This game gets 4 treasures out of 5. So what is Castlevania?
ドラキュラ伝説にピリオドを打つのは君だ。コナミからついに登場。ファミコンディスクシステム用ソフト悪魔城ドラキュラ好評発売中。Konami.
Before Smash Bros, before God of War ripoffs, before Metroidvanias were a thing, we just had the beginning, Castlevania. One of the notable series starters on the NES, Castlevania was released in 1986 by Konami, who were beginning their rise to top-tier game studio making series like Metal Gear and Silent Hill, and before their distant sudden fall that ends with pachinko machines. A platformer, you control Simon Belmont, vampire hunter, who is tasked with defeating Dracula and his ghoulish platoon of Halloween villains. Simon must go throughout each level, killing enemies, avoiding projectiles, and all in all, do everything he can to keep his health up. Each level you control Simon in is actually a part of a 3-block section that is separated by a door and littered with various enemies and ends with a boss at the end. If Simon loses all of his health due to getting hit, he starts at the most recent door that was crossed. If he loses all current lives and the player chooses to continue, he starts out back at the beginning of the section. Now, how can you avoid this? Well, Simon takes out his enemies with his trademarked vampire killer, a whip that is ridiculously small. Like, how the hell am I supposed to kill the king of vampires with this puny thing and nothing else? Well, luckily, that's not all you are left with. When you destroy the candles on the wall, or sometimes when enemies die, random pickups can be gotten. One particular pickup actually upgrades the whip, turning into a chain whip and extending its length, then extending it again while increasing the damage it causes, which becomes essential the longer you go through the game. Also gotten through pickups include money bags for points, a cross that eliminates everything on the screen, a pitcher that makes you invulnerable for a short period of times, food to restore health, and most importantly, sub-weapons and hearts. Sub-weapons are various additional offensive and support attacks that can be performed so long you have the required amount of hearts available. And these include the multi-hit cross, the quick knife, the arc flying axe, the short-range holy water, and the time-stopping clock. You can only throw out one of these items on screen at a time, unless you find a hidden multiplayer item which doubles and then triples the amount you can have on screen. The game at its core is similar to the initial Ninja Gaiden games, even in its design, but as that game prioritizes speed, maneuverability, and quick-twitch platforming, Castlevania is more slow and thoughtful in its movements, prioritizing attacks and protecting yourself above all else as you walk throughout each level, which is important, as the enemies are designed to make you work for your victory. While enemies aren't as mobile with their movements as the Ninja Gaiden enemies, they are more in their movement cycles and projectiles, which can be hit or avoided. The platforming is way more grounded, so while a jump could get you to a nearby platform or avoid an enemy coming below, you are also committed to that jump, which means if that jump leads you into a pit, be prepared to lose a life. Speaking of pits, these will become your worst nightmare. Simon has a pretty large life bar, but falling in the void will negate that entirely. It seems like the enemies know this as well, as any time you get hit, you immediately fall backwards. While you have recovery frames to not immediately get hit again, if you just so happen to be near a pit, get ready to learn Chinese, buddy, cause it's game over. The bats and Medusa heads are the worst offenders, with their flying arcs directly correlating to smash controllers. While the game may be frustrating, it still holds up as a pioneer in a series that, while have had its ups and downs, have led to many a fond memories in gamers' heads. The game is not perfect, but in the years that followed, many advancements have been implemented to improve the series formula that could not have happened without this NES classic. This game gets 4 Simons out of 5. Got him. You son of a bitch! So what is the Sonic Blastman series?
He is greater than anybody else. The man came to save our planet. That's the Sonic Blastman.
Super Nintendo beat-em-ups were often some of the best games on the console. With headliners such as TMNT Turtles in Time and the Final Fight franchise, it was hard to stand out even if you were a quality franchise. One such series is the Sonic Blastman games, which consists of 3 games in its prime, 1 on the arcade and 2 on the Super Nintendo. This series has been buried in history, with the character not showing up in more than 25 years other than cameos in other games. Should Sonic Blastman be brought back? Let's check out the entire history of the series and see. Sonic Blastman on the arcade was released in 1990 by Taito. The game and entire series is based around Sonic Blastman, a regular man who has a superhero alter ego based around super punches to criminals and bad guys to keep the public safe. Unlike the next 2 games, Sonic Blastman in arcades is actually a punching bag simulator. The game actually requires the player to put on punching gloves and punch a strength gauge, which will translate to damage to enemies and targets in the game. The harder you punch, the more damage you'll do to the enemies Sonic Blastman faces. You only get 3 attempts to register the hardest hit, after which you either pass or fail the level, depending on how hard you hit. The levels themselves ramp up in intensity, with the first level being beating up a common street thug, and the final level being destroying an asteroid that's gonna blow up the Earth. This game is engaging at first because of the interest factor, but since the game is so limited, it won't be long until you want to move on to the next machine. If you're hoping to find this game in your local arcade, don't! Every Sonic Blastman arcade machine was recalled in 1995 after a load of players got injured trying to put their all into punching the bag. Taito ended up having to pay a $50,000 fine a year after release, and this version of Sonic Blastman was put in a retirement home. Technically, this game received a sequel called Real Puncher in the arcades in Japan, but didn't star Sonic Blastman. Sonic Blastman on Super Nintendo was released in 1992 by Taito. Moving away from the hand-breaking model of the arcade game, Sonic Blastman on Super Nintendo is the series' first foray both on console and as a beat-em-up. You again control Sonic Blastman as he walks through the streets and beats up criminals with his own 2 hands. Similar to the arcade game, you start out fighting humans, then move on to aliens and robots, and finally, his evil clone. So, you know, appropriate escalation. Sonic Blastman can move across the level, beating up bad guys as they stand to oppose him. He can punch, grab his enemies for close shots or throws, jump, and unleash special attacks, and his most powerful attack, the D-Punch. A screen-clearing move which can only be done a few times per level. The fighting in this game is super satisfying with the multiple ways you can throw and dispatch enemies, keeping you entertained again and again. What won't keep you entertained is how slow the game feels. Movement feel like you're walking in mud, and overall the game is very slow paced. While you might be entertained by the actual fighting, it'll wear out its welcome quickly as you go from level to level. In between levels, you actually get bonus stages that resemble the original arcade game by building strength to defeat a singular enemy. You don't have to punch your Super Nintendo, though if you really feel like it, go ahead. Instead, You just rotate the B-pad to charge your power. This game is an expanded improvement upon the arcade version, though it commits a vital sin in the beat-em-up genre by not having multiplayer. This, combined with the malaise feel of the game, sours the experience of those who want to experience the first game on Super Nintendo. Sonic Blast Man 2 was released on the Super Nintendo in 1994, again by Taito. The undisputed best in the series, Sonic Blast Man 2 again stars Sonic Blastman, this time accompanied with other choosable superheroes, including the electric-wielding Captain Choyer and the fire-manipulating Sonya. This game is a considerable upgrade from the first game and can be enjoyed to this day. First off, this game has multiplayer, meaning a friend can join in on the justice bringing. In this edition, however, you don't start off fighting petty criminals like before, instead going straight to aliens and horrific monsters. Each level consists of multiple environments that advance when all enemies on the screen are defeated. Like before, you can punch, jump, grab enemies for throws, a newly introduced roll to avoid enemy damage, and perform special moves, though the feel is a lot faster and streamlined for this game. Each of the characters have an alignment in regards to strength and speed, with Captain Choyer being the strongest but slowest, Sonya being the fastest yet weakest, and Sonic Blastman being balanced in each. This creates another aspect of choosing what character will fit the level you are playing at the moment, as well as promote multiple playthroughs to see the other characters. The special attacks are similar to the first game, though each character only has 2 that drain a limited special counter that can be refilled by pickups. One attack is usually an extended projectile that takes 1 counter, and the other being a screen clearing move similar to the D-Punch taking 2. While this game doesn't reinvent the wheel, it is highly recommended for playthroughs with friends as you will have a blast. It may not be as flashy as other Super Nintendo beat-em-ups, but I will, at the very least, recommend the second Super Nintendo game to anyone vaguely interested in nonsense superhero adventures. Technically, a revival was released called Sonic Blast Heroes in 2011 in arcades, but it was only released in Japan and was also an arcade game released in 2011, so you would be forgiven if you didn't know it existed. Either way, this game is modeled after the first game with the scenarios that required players to punch a bag that translate the damage in the game. It's a fun little novelty like the original, but not much more than that, especially since it's extremely rare to find. And from there, Sonic Blastman was put to rest for good. Taito as a company was acquired by Square Enix in 2005 and is still alive today, so the IP is still available for a new game. I think once the dust settles from Square's recent troubles, Sonic Blastman, Captain Choyer, and Sonya should put the suits on one more time. This series gets 3 broken hands out of 5.